So the Trump administration is firing genuine experts and defunding and dismantling the institutions that do important work. And one area is science. There has been a brain drain of scientific work that is getting defunded or is being replaced with pseudoscience that prioritizes profits over progress for humanity. And that is giving the United States an international reputation for now being hostile to scientists and scientific work. And I spoke about this recently with U.S. Representative Bill Foster from Illinois. Here's our discussion. Well, Representative Bill Foster, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir. How are you?
Oh, I'm just living the life here. You know, it's hell on wheels in Washington, D.C., but it's a beautiful day outside back home.
No,
So,
I'm glad to hear that. I love the turns of the season. I understand that your favorite food, as it was reported to me, is a key lime pie.
aha, yes, that is relevant because of every day we celebrate Pi Day, you know, myself being a scientist.
Yes.
We try to remind people of the importance of scientific truth and facts and logic, which are often in short supply in Washington. And so on Pi Day, we often sponsor legislation to recognize the number pi. Of course, you know, there's a raging debate about whether 2 pi is really more relevant. You know, pi is the ratio of the diameter of the circumference to the diameter, whereas
Yes.
really it should be the circumference to the radius, which is 2 pi. And so that scientists will spend a lot longer talking about that than they should. But the reason, my favorite food actually is key lime pie for a couple of reasons. It's the whole pie connection, of course. And also the fact that I'm a big proponent of green technology, of which key lime pie is crucial.
That's right. Now, as a native Floridian, I'm actually close to the Keys. We all know that a real key lime pie is yellow. It's got some green in it, but it's really more yellow with a little rind on it, to be sure. But yes, no, it's definitely it's a good representative of green energy,
Yes.
and it's tart enough to fuel a rocket. I think that's for sure.
Oh, good stuff. There's a big variation. I mean, you buy stuff in the grocery store and it just is like gooey sugar. And then there are
Yes.
other things that are tart, as you
Yeah.
say, and made with the proper ripeness of limes. And it's a quality food item.
It is. It is. Now, you are a PhD physicist, and the only one in Congress. How does one go from being a PhD physicist to a U.S. congressperson?
Well, I sort of followed the well-trod trajectory. I actually started out in theater stage lighting, did that for a while, then spent 25 years as a high-energy particle physicist, smashing protons and antiprotons together to make particles that haven't been around since the Big Bang.
Hmm.
And then, you know, about 15 years ago now, I fell prey to my family's recessive gene for adult onset political activism, which actually runs in my family. My dad was a scientist who left science to become a civil rights lawyer, and Dad wrote a lot of the enforcement language behind the Civil Rights Act of 1964, one of the biggest steps forward for human rights in our country's history.
What we're seeing today, the defunding of science in this administration is by all views unprecedented. What do you see as some of the biggest dangers of this defunding of science, both here in America and internationally?
Yeah, well, you're sending a signal to young kids that are thinking of going into scientific careers is don't expect to be paid. Don't expect to have your laboratory experiments that may take several years to complete. You can get halfway through them and all of a sudden they will arbitrarily decide to cut off funding for it and you'll never get the answer that you've worked years for. And so you do this to a handful of scientists and the word gets around. You know, traditionally, scientists from all over the world have been just competing like crazy to be the lucky ones who get to come and do science in the United States.
Yes.
You know, the brain drain for decades went out of Europe and out of Asia into the United States. And now we're seeing, you know, a lot of tenured professors on top universities are getting letters from France, from China, from all over the world saying, hey, if you're having your lab funding cut off, come here and we'll fund you very well. And you'll have great students from all over the world who are happy to come to France to do the research that apparently this administration doesn't care about.
It's so true. And we're seeing not just anti-science, but also pseudoscience sort of taking a center stage. What do you think perhaps are the motivations of this administration to usher in this moment of anti-science and pseudoscience?
Well, there's this famous quote from the debate in England about Brexit, and where one of the politicians there said, we've had quite enough about experts. All right. And that's the problem.
Okay.
And there has been in the Republican Party sort of a long strain of anti-scientific thought. That this is, I remember, I guess the first time I was aware of it was reading about how Richard Nixon found he could score political points against Adlai Stevenson, who he's running against, by calling him an egghead. All right, making fun of the fact that actually he was a very well-educated guy. And, part of that's understanding. It's understandable. We've always had a great love for just succeeding with really pure hard work. But there's also been, a merit, and particularly the more complex society gets, the more valuable an education gets.
Tell me, what are some of the ways that everyday Americans can stand up for the American scientific community?
Well, you talk to your elected members of Congress about it. In basically every congressional district, there's a university or a college that depends on federal funds to do research. And they have, or they're young kids who are graduating from high school or graduating from college and want to continue their education. And they're saying, well, you can do this, you can try to get in there, but who knows if your funding will be cut off? Who knows if all of a sudden the president's going to come in and order your university that these are the kind of people I want to hire, and these are the people I'm not going to let you hire, or we're going to cut off your money, which is what he is doing, which sort of sends shivers down the spine of everyone who believes in that truth and facts and logic should be determine how we bring society forward and bring scientific thought forward.
Now, I was reading an article in Miami Herald about this, and it talked a little bit about how a lot of the president's base is from rural areas, and this is sort of appealing to his base because perhaps those folks are distrustful of intellectuals and elites, and feels that that's really what makes up the scientific community. And he's sort of feeding his base by defunding science. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Well, there's certainly a lot of disappointment. I've in my career represented very rural areas, and some of those small towns are having tough times. Have had tough times for a while. And when you talk to people, one of the toughest things is that all of the young kids, the best and brightest graduate from high school, go off to college and never come back. And, and usually the reason is, well, I've got this girlfriend and I know I promised to come back and work in the family business, but my girlfriend really, she's got a job too, and we can't find a job in my small town. And so it doesn't mean that, it's just reality that these towns have had a hard time for a long time. And, and I think that same thing, frankly, it's about to hit the upper middle class when you see AI do the same thing to very well-paid upper middle class jobs.
Yeah.
That has been happening to farmers with farm technology, making people more productive. It's, so I think we're all in this together. And it's a mistake to try to say that, oh, well, there you got rural America will always, be on one side of a divide, and suburban and urban America will be different. I think it's not going to be that way in the near future, and it really never was that way.
I appreciate that empathetic response, and I think that's really important for us to talk about, for sure. That we all Americans, and there's, no matter where you're from, that we always have common ground. Representative Bill Foster from Illinois' 11th District. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the time you took today with me.
Sure, I'm happy to. Have a great day.
Can you tell me about that tie?
Oh, well, sure. This is my tie with a periodic table here.
Yeah.
And, and so I wear it periodically. And, it's sort of an elemental part of my personality. But obviously it's got this big problem that the atomic weight of indium is wrong on it. And so when I'm walking down the street, people will just point at me and laugh for having an incorrect atomic weight. And so, but the tie was a gift. I kind of have to wear it.
I can't believe I missed that error. That's amazing. I think that should be for everyday use, not just periodic use.
What? That's an excellent suggestion. So I actually didn't start out in science. I started out in business. When I was
Okay.
19 years old, my little brother and I started this company in our basement with $500 from my parents. The company now manufactures most of the theater lighting equipment in the US. So we're
Really?
90% of the lights on Broadway, 50% of touring rock and roll. But most importantly, back when I was 23 years old, I designed and programmed the control system for the Disneyland Main Street Electrical Parade, which has made, generations of kids smile and laugh.
A huge part of my childhood. Absolutely. Well, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you for lightening up our world. We
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Okay.